Central Cee is one of the most prolific British rappers to come out of our generation. This is the reality of the situation, and people do need to accept that. His success has been met with criticism though. One of the biggest critiques of his success being his proximity to the road aesthetic and how his racial ambiguity has played a massive role in his success like many before him.
Like, what's your ethnicity then? I want to know that real quick. What's your ethnicity?
Chelsea, come on now.
Who wants to know that? You or the people in the chat is asking that?
Me, I want to know.
Chelsea, come on now.
What is this? Hot fire date questions?
Bro, just what's your ethnicity, bro? I just want to know because I don't know what's your ethnicity.
Neither do I, bro. I don't know ethnicity.
Chelsea, come on.
Given his hesitancy to publicly address it, I'm sure it's something even he's aware of, that he profits in many ways of the racial ambiguity of his image. His proximity to whiteness and the commercial image of road that he kind of plays up for the public, let's be real. His manager even referenced his criticism at some point, going as far to laugh at people for actually engaging in that lifestyle. YB's and Waypo on his Insta, his story at least. That's kind of a big part of the thesis of this video and what I want to talk about. Black people in this trap talk need to pack it in. Black man in London is at the bottom of the drug trade in 95% of scenarios. Buy a scales, get some bags, wrap up some food and go draw bait crackheads and ask them to bring their friends. Now you're a trapper. Hop on a plane, vacuum pack some wheat. Am I allowed to say this? I don't know if I'm allowed to do this on YouTube. And you do all that to buy clothes, jewels, F-gal, and pay a little rent. Your mum's got a bed for you at home, there's rice in the pot. And now instead you're going to jail and you come out and you're a gangster and that's lived a hard life. Then you got these nerds thinking they can police who's real. Everyone with color in their skin gets a pass and it's part of the struggle. Everyone else is a nerd unless they've been to jail. I'm gonna pause this for a second. Most people don't talk about how race intersects into what Central Cee does. And when they do, it's often reduced to a conversation about whether he's on road. Specifically whether he's trapping. But that conflation is already kind of interesting. The book Blacklisted argues that within the UK, black masculinity is culturally heavily associated with criminality. In the 1970s, when the word bad man was coined and popularized in Jamaican culture, it spread and eventually evolved into the word roadman. Being a roadman or doing road is synonymous with black people because the language is carrying blackness in its origin. It's why YB's makes the connection to black people and trapping to begin with. He raises the question, why are black people the only ones we see as real by default? The writer of Blacklisted had an interesting definition of the other side of doing road. On the flip side of bravado, the roadman is all about struggle. Doing road means putting in work, hustling to sustain oneself by any means necessary. With this in mind, this video is sponsored by Skillshare. Working on my video game has been its own little hustle. It's time consuming and trying to manage it while working on these videos is a hassle. One of the skills I've been refining more as a result is my 2D animation and my program. They kind of go hand in hand. Trying to sell the weight of movement and speed is so important for something like this. Thankfully, Skillshare has an online learning community for creatives by creatives. The entire platform is built on the contributions of creatives, meaning if I want to learn more about 2D animation or programming, I can genuinely just go to Skillshare. There's a course by Michael Murr where he goes in depth explaining everything you need to know about programming in Unity 2D, which is what I'm doing. That's what I used to make Nixie. But there's more than that. You can learn to edit videos, learn to write scripts, software engineering. These are very digital skills, which is where the world is headed. And you can set yourself up pretty well with Skillshare. And there's thousands of creative classes on this platform. Look, here's another great example. Gabrielle Aguiar Prod. I've bought some of their packs on the Unity Asset Store, and they have a class on Skillshare. So I could literally, if I wanted to be lazy, pay for each individual pack on the Unity Asset Store, or I can get more bang for my buck and go on Skillshare and just learn to do it myself. A genuine practical application of how Skillshare has people that I'm actually paying money to use their assets for, but they have tutorials so I can learn how to do the things that I'm paying them to do. Again, it's a platform for creatives. Something I've learned with time is that there's a lot of black British creatives that want to do what I do. They want to make games, make videos, and create. Skillshare can help you do that. And guess what? The first 500 people to hit the link in the description will receive a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. Get started today, do your thing.
You're a wannabe roadman. The road didn't pay you, so you're an influencer now, bro. Bro, you're an influencer.
I've made money on road. I've made money on influencer.
You're an influencer, bro.
I just made 90
You're not road. You're an influencer. You're not gang. You're an influencer, bro.
It's the same reason Mandy calls PK Humble a fake wannabe roadman. He's black and acting bad, but not adhering to the commercialized conventions of a roadman. And whether we want to admit or not, the idea of the roadman we associate with blackness. And that cosplay is just derivative of the black diaspora. And transparently, everybody knows it.
I walk on G, man's gonna spit some bars in it from a tune to get me. Anyway.
When Cench speaks with patois, it's not UK slang or him talking road, it's Jamaican. When Cench raps on songs inspired by dancehall and Afro swing, that's carrying blackness in its origin. When YBs correctly acknowledges that the drill scene does have strong ties to the black community, one has to eventually ask, why is Central Cee the international face of it? Something so clearly derivative of blackness within London. In understanding the significance and history of Black Africans and Caribbeans preserving their culture within this country, it raises bigger questions about the nature of his success. All this trap shit people talk about. If you ain't made $1 million or gonna make $1 million, I don't want to hear about your trap if you ain't made $1 million. You're a regular civilian. Everyone trying to police who's a real trapper. It's a fried occupation. Lowest IQ and the biggest nerds can do it. 12-year-old kids can trap. 13, 14, working. Bare sneaky people on the internet talk like it's something. There's a lot to unpack here. I kind of got really into that, I'm not gonna lie. There's a lot to unpack here. Now I'm not done. I know he's been to jail and he's speaking from a place of not wanting to go back. And this is kind of his way of warning people about it. But that's obviously not really how it comes off. It reads more like he's making fun of these people. And I think that's undeniable. Black people, to be specific. Well, you manage a white man, or at least someone white passing. And the problem with this is, the person you're managing is someone who profits of this aesthetic. This whole image is heavily derivative of commercial ideas of what it means to be road. That the idea of the roadman as a concept has become so thoroughly commercialized that anyone can adopt the style, sensibilities, and dialect and really just start cosplaying as road. This second point raises more interesting questions. YBs acknowledges that the aesthetic tied to trapping is a lie. It's commercial. Anyone that actually knows anybody trapping knows that they don't all dress like this. Your dealer will meet you in their car looking like this. But there's this idea that if you can't commercialize your struggle, your culture, your identity, then you don't deserve to be heard. And that's interesting. The question isn't really, why can't Central Cee be road? It's, why is Central Cee's more commercial idea of being road been so successful? Because just as I don't agree with the people saying Central Cee has to be doing road to say the things that he's saying in his music, I do take issue with how he's effectively commercialized what the music represented, while his management takes misguided shots at black people and by extension, where the music came from. And that's kind of what I want to explore. Not an inherent critique of Central Cee, but what he represents in the white media and by extension, why white audiences seem to take from what he did a lot more. Let's start with a fun question. What race is Central Cee? Some of you already know the answer to this question because he revealed it in 2023. But before I go into that, I think it's worth talking about his come up.
Pull up skirt, would you ride for me? Tell me now, would you die for me? All these other girls in the free.
One of Central Cee's first songs was a song called Pull Up, and it has an Afro swing, Jamaican dancehall inspiration. You'd watch this and be like, yeah, that's a white man. There's no real ambiguity. Now, what's interesting to note here is that Central Cee's musical influence here is very derivative of the 2016 boom in Afro swing. It goes without saying, Afro swing is a black music genre. It's partially inspired by Jamaican dancehall, which is also a black music genre. These genres overtly carry blackness. So saying that Central Cee makes music inspired by popular black music styles isn't inherently inaccurate at all, really.
There definitely was some musical influence though. West London as well being the home of like Notting Hill Carnival. There's a lot. So like West London is like a very like ripe area for like music and I don't know what you're gonna call it, black music or whatever. Right. Because like Notting Hill Carnival is right there. There's a lot of like Caribbean influence in the area and shit.
Right. But maybe he just really likes Afro swing. Afro swing is great, that boom was big, you know, cool. 2020 hits, and we're seeing the rise of drill. And Central Cee has a complete rebrand. He is unrecognizable. And yeah, Afro swing was big in 2016, but nobody went from Afro swing to UK drill. They're nothing alike. You didn't see Young Bane or Jay Huss rapping on drill beats. They didn't fundamentally change their style or become unrecognizable. See, because Afro swing and dancehall mean so much to their respective cultures, the idea of quickly abandoning it wholeheartedly would feel silly. There's still a whole movement to bring back that 2016 era of Afro swing music specifically. That big boom in Afro swing is what led to a big influx in African pride that managed to help counteract the whole culture of Afrophobia within the UK. Central Cee doesn't really have that attachment. He grew up near Nottingham Hill Carnival, and surely if he was really immersed in the space, he'd be more interested in representing that. But instead we get this shift. Why? Well, the obvious answer is this is the direction where popular UK music went. UK drill was effectively what replaced Afro swing in the mainstream, and while some would say it's really violent, began to represent a raw, underground sound that was gaining a lot of prominence and a lot of traction. Pop culture, like in many places within the Western world, is dictated by commercial ideas of blackness. So when Central Cee chooses to shift his musical sensibilities in the direction of commercialized ideas of blackness, it's interesting. Central Cee has this LA Leakers freestyle that he did, and during it, he starts to explain what he calls UK slang. You say what's up, we say wagwan. You say the feds done a sweep, we say boy them run up my gaff. Like, I don't know who's gonna say this, but this isn't UK slang. It's Jamaican Patois, right? It's Patois.
Tired, like I'm actually tired. I just speak Jamaican. Huh? I just speak Jamaican.
Wait. Go on then.
So what I'm start? Be a rude boy, you know. Me going back to the yard, seeing a pit, you know.
This guy is weird, bro.
Now it's been appropriated into UK slang, like it's been assimilated into how young people speak, specifically in London and Manchester. But in framing it this way, it divorces it from its black origin. The comments are all celebrating him, to explaining the differences within our language. And obviously, like, you know, man's just freestyling, innit? But there's an element that's like, a white British guy is explaining Jamaican Patois to international audiences. And instead of asking questions about why this is happening, or why a UK Jamaican artist isn't the one with the platform to be able to do it, we celebrate him. You say what's up, we say wagwan. Like, there's a lot of we's in this, but that's not true. Jamaicans say this. Some black people say this, and even not every Jamaican loves that. People in the UK just started imitating them. It's been done for generations and by many artists before Central Cee. I can't believe I even have to say this, but there's nothing British about saying mash up the nanny. There's nothing inherently UK about saying boy them to refer to the police. And there's definitely nothing English about saying nash or yard fam. Now the response to this talking point is obvious. Yes, these things are carrying blackness in their origin, but don't lie. Non-black people say this stuff too. White British people say these things too. And you're right, many of them do. Central Cee is a product of a culture of Londoners, adopting the dialect and social sensibilities of black people. And that's where I admit, the title of this video, it's a little misleading. The problem with Central Cee isn't Central Cee himself. It's the culture that creates him. Before we talk about anything, I want to talk about language again, specifically how the UK navigates this language. The reason Central Cee says this is how we talk, while effectively just imitating Jamaican Patois throughout his freestyle, is that a lot of it has been diluted into this idea of multicultural London English. For lack of a better way to describe it, multicultural London English is how the UK describes how immigrants talk. It's in reference to the multiculturalism of London, because most immigrants ended up living in the city. Most people don't even know that multicultural London English is the term for how they're speaking. I remember I was doing my A-levels in English language, and I wanted to talk about the evolution of our slang. And my English teacher goes, "Oh, you mean multicultural London English?" And I'm like, what? I'm not sure when exactly it happened, but at some point since the turn of the century, the word man has become the top trump invincible bulletproof pronoun to have ever existed in the English language, and it has nothing to do with white people. It stems from MLE, Multicultural London English, which I mentioned previously as a phenomenon I didn't even realize had an official name until I started writing this book. Despite having lived, grown up, and worked in the city from whence I came, MLE is a sociolect originally developed by young people in London that's taking root in youth culture at large. You can call it a street parlance connected intimately to the black diaspora, specifically Jamaican Patois, that has embedded itself in cool speak since the latter half of the 20th century. The way we speak was basically given a name by white people, and nobody really knew about it. I grew up in a Nigerian home, so a lot of the things that the UK considers slang to me is just Yoruba and Pidgin. If you're Jamaican, I imagine when you first encounter this term, all you're thinking is, oh, you mean patois. It's important that I stress and communicate this, that black people did not come up with these multiculturalism terms. These were terms coined by white people, Paul Kurzweil and Jenny Cheshire to be specific, in 2004 to 2007. But there was a more informal term in the media at the time called Jafrican, a mix of Jamaican and African. It's not a good name, but once again, speaks to how much of this language is coded around blackness.
The whites have become black. A particular sort of violent, destructive, nihilistic gangster culture has become the fashion. And black and white, boy and girl operate in this language together. This language which is wholly false, which is a Jamaican Patois that's been intruded in England. And this is why so many of us have this sense of literally a foreign country.
A historian said this, by the way. We love our European historians. But I read that to communicate, one, British people do recognize that this language is of black origin. But two, that the pushback against this language within the country is very much predicated on the fear of blackness, coming in to invade and destroy the traditional British way. British identity, despite all the liberal rhetoric to the contrary, is obviously seen as synonymous with whiteness. Modern British identity grew with and was shaped by a fundamentally and undeniably racist British Empire. But isn't that interesting? Central Cee is celebrated for parroting the same language that black British people were demonized for bringing to the country. This is made equally interesting when you think about the fact that Central Cee is the manifestation of many of these fears around blackness in the country to begin with. The Standard can reveal that this new English variety is replacing Cockney in inner London, as more white children adopt the speech patterns and vocabulary of their black neighbors and classmates. Teachers have dubbed the phenomenon Jafrican, and TV's Ali G would understand it perfectly. I'm gonna save you guys a ton of time and just explain who Ali G was. Ali G was a parody of black British people and black popular culture. He was designed to parody young white people imitating these things. But the byproduct is he made people that spoke in MLE appear stupid to mostly white audiences.
Fire risk. Hey, yeah, motherfucker, what's the problem? Huh? Yeah, we just folk brothers chilling on the sidewalk, maxing, relaxing, it ain't too taxing.
This show is terrible. When they say Ali G would understand, they're talking about white people imitating black people's dialect and sensibilities. That's why it was originally called Jafrican. The Evening Standard specifically seemed to have a really big issue with patois. They had an end-of-year quiz in 2010 on New Year's Eve. How did Nang, Greasy, and Butters triumph in 2010? One of the options was literally, they are street or Jafrican expressions which have overtaken Cockney slang terms. This was a really big narrative at the time too, that MLE had somehow destroyed the Cockney language and culture.
He's died! What flipping loony's gonna get himself killed? Hey, yo, GSC, LAPD, man. Yeah, and?
The British National Party had a whole post about it. It's been deleted, by the way, but that's what the Wayback Machine is for. British media control is very interesting. It reads, Cockneys have become the first British group to be ethnically cleansed. What a headline, by the way. Wild headline. Cockney is being replaced by what is politely called Multicultural London English, or LME for short. LME, also known as Jafrican, which is a combination of Jamaican, African, and Asian. They just lumped all the minorities together. I think this might have been pre-BAME, the pre-BAMification of the world. The key point I'm trying to communicate here is that this language for the longest time was never considered traditional UK slang or linguistics. It was always seen as this foreign and scary way of speaking, very clearly synonymous with blackness and by extension, criminality. Listen to David Lammy, an archetypical successful black man. If you turn the screen on, so you were listening to him on the radio, you'd think he's white. If I need to point it out, because this was in reference to riots, the point being made is that those speaking in patois would be more likely to commit crime and be violent, as opposed to black people could integrate better into British culture and society. On an institutional level, MLE is really discouraged. Several schools ban it, which is really its own conversation about cultural expression and linguistics. You're being taught that the way that you engage with your culture isn't proper and is problematic. That this label MLE is really just serving to soften the blow, because what's really being said is, hey, leave the black stuff at the door, okay? Like, before the Roadman idea kind of emerged, we used to call people chavs. Chav was a classist term that you'd use to describe a certain kind of white working class guy. It had its own set of ideas associated with it, but for the purposes of this video, it basically just meant white trash. And that's important to note. Chavs were exclusively white people. When someone told me about a chav, my mind would go, oh, white. There was no such thing as a black chav. It doesn't matter if you had an accent or whatever. This was a universal truth, because that's a roadman. Now you can learn more about that idea in this video because there is a lot to unpack there. But I say that to say this. Given what I know about how social dynamics worked in the UK back in 2015, Central Cee definitely wouldn't have been considered a roadman, and depending on who you ask, he may have been considered a chav. But with time, chavs were kind of phased out. I don't know a single person that still uses the word chav. And that's because a lot of working class white people started to realize, consciously or otherwise, there is no greater counterculture than a proximity to blackness. In Goldbeck's research, she states that the speakers of MLE are part of a counterculture against the dominant and oppressive class system of the UK. She states that it's a way of expressing non-elite identity and resisting to mainstream culture. She explains that people use MLE to distance themselves from their social class. Their non-conformist language use expresses their non-conformist attitudes towards strict class structures in the UK.
Oh man, maybe I do need a stylist. As I've gone onto the carpet to take this picture, I see someone looking at me from a distance. They're like, get him off, get him off. So what I will say is I dress like this 365 days a year. I'm not changing it for one day. It's not even my wedding day. You lot love going to these events in fancy dress, dressed as other people. I went there as me.
Whether he realizes it or not, Central Cee leans on black Britishness to show a lack of subservience to cultural norms. If Britishness is synonymous with whiteness, then blackness is the furthest thing from it. I've spoken about this in the past, but uniformity is a big part of British culture. It's why so many people here associate individuality and self-expression with American sensibilities. Institutionally, we've been trained to be very uniform and dislike anything that isn't. One simple theory is that MLE is taking root because of its indelible association with Jamaican Patois, and by extension, Jamaican culture in general. And the fact remains that Caribbean influence has been cool for generations. Through reggae and ska, straight through dancehall and jungle, all the way up to grime and Afro bashment. This is kind of what makes the role whiteness plays so interesting, because whiteness is a metaphor for power. When you describe someone white as a chap, you're bringing attention to their whiteness and saying, yeah, they're white, but they're not that powerful. But when you can weaponize the parts of blackness that people exoticize, while reaping the benefits afforded by passing as white, unsurprisingly, you become one of the biggest artists to come out of London. Central Cee is the commercialization of black Londoners. He represents London culture perfectly, because his imitation of black people, specifically Jamaicans, echoes how the white working class within Britain slowly began to adopt blackness as a vessel to communicate their lack of conformity. I remember I did some contract work a few years back, and one of my co-workers started talking to me about what music they like, and I said hip-hop, grime, and rap. And she just kept going on about Central Cee. And she showed me a concert with him on the phone, and she was gushing about this guy. And what's interesting to me, she is to me what many people many years back would have considered a chav. And this is what makes the comments from Central Cee's manager so interesting. He specifies and criticizes black people for not viewing Central Cee as authentic, but seems to fundamentally misunderstand what the critique of Central Cee is, and by extension, involuntarily reveals a lot. The problem with Central Cee isn't that he hasn't lived the life that he presents in his videos. I'm pretty sure Dave hasn't really done anything either. The problem with Central Cee is that he represents how blackness is often stripped of its origin for profit. That even MLE as a term really only serves to allow British people to simplify these different cultures and intricacies. Like, I've been using this term MLE, but MLE is more than just patois. And this simplification goes further than language. It's even in simple things like BAME. There's a real cultural othering that only serves to diminish the significance of these different cultures. And to me, that's kind of what I find the most interesting. Really, Central Cee is the perfect personification of the culture, whether we realize it or not. Not because he's actually a good representation of UK drill, Afro swing, or even being on road, but because his success in appropriating these multicultural influences into a palatable commercial aesthetic for mostly white and international audiences speaks directly to how white people within London engage with black Britishness. the way that they have chosen to engage with multiculturalism. Central Cee has succeeded where many have failed, and not because he's paving the way for the next artist to follow in his footsteps, but because in being so successful in transforming Black identity into a commercial image and sound, he's made it incredibly palatable for the white media. And some of that isn't his fault. He can't change his ethnicity or complexion, but by playing into that racial misunderstanding, he doesn't paint the best picture of how he engages with Blackness either. Because when your manager makes a point to look down on specifically Black people for daring to protect their culture from commercial appropriation, it doesn't come off like appreciation. When you come out in Black hairstyles, rapping to a variety of Black music genres, in an explicit effort to gain international appeal, what does it say about your relationship with or to Blackness? And this is where I'm going to give my personal take. My personal opinion on Central Cee and a large majority of his fandom. Central Cee is Black British culture for people that don't want to engage with Black British people. In my experience, the only people to bring up Central Cee to me in a passionate and positive light were white. They were white and trying to relate to me, be it the story of the girl I used to work with or our motive back in uni. Central Cee is the appropriation of Black Britishness, but he represents London culture very well because white Londoners have done the same thing. Whether we realize it or not, Blackness is the inherent counter to British values and culture because British identity is synonymous with whiteness.
Yeah, I just got here too. I don't really know. What do you? I think you're. Nah, seriously, I think you're Albanian. I think you're Albanian, bro. You're Albanian.
If I was Albanian, I'd say I'm Albanian. Every Albanian is Albanian, I'm proud.
And as Central Cee knows himself, there's nothing cool about being white, because whiteness in its conception is oppositional to Blackness, and is really just a metaphor for power. Whiteness doesn't represent the underdog. The problem is not Central Cee. The problem is the culture that creates Central Cee. The problem is how London criminalizes immigrants, their culture, and dialect, and selectively celebrates white people that take on their multicultural indicators, and then strip them of their core identity for the sake of international appeal and profit. The problem is not Central Cee. The problem is how in imitating Black music genres for the sake of creating art, it detaches him enough to commercialize the sound and the aesthetic. The problem is not Central Cee. The problem is the same as it's always been. The problem is that we love Black culture. We love Black culture, but we really don't love Black people. If you made it this far in the video and you like to leave a comment saying, Chelsea, come on now. If you get it, you get it. But yeah, this is a really personal topic. I know I was invited to go on a podcast years back to talk about this, but I didn't listen to enough Central Cee to be able to feel confident going on the podcast, but I knew what I wanted to say. And so what's ironic to me is that I've done more research for this video. And I'm like, man, I could have just gone on this podcast and said what I was going to say anyway. Yeah, something I did notice when doing research in this space is that a lot of the videos on Central Cee, or covering the language, or covering Chavs, or covering Roadman, is that there isn't a lot of conversation around race. And this is just the byproduct of a lot of these influencers, a lot of these content creators, be it Jimmy the Giant or Traplaw Ross, you know, them just being white, right? And they don't have the depth or the ability to speak on race and how it intersects into all these issues or into all these topics, because it's more like a spectacle, it's spectator sport for them. And I feel like something is fundamentally missed when you don't add that dynamic, when you don't look at things from that lens. There are a lot of creative Black British artists. One of them that I actually wanted to plug in this video, but I couldn't find a place to put it, was Jim Legacy. Jim Legacy, some of you have probably already heard of, but Jim Legacy has a very unique sound, especially given the kind of ecosystem of music within the UK, especially Black music. A lot of it has been grime, a lot of it has been drill, a lot of it has been Afro swing, etc. Jim Legacy has come on, he started singing. Now we have a very, I'd say cultural uniformity is a big thing here, but it is, right? Singing isn't something we usually do. Jim Legacy starts singing, he started running on the overground with his boys, this, that, and the third. And I rate it because not only is he doing something different, it's a unique sound, like a genuinely unique sound and aesthetic that I haven't seen before. And so this is why, again, when I see people hype up Central Cee, and I'm like, well, he's just doing what these other people are doing. These aren't original things for him. He's just leaning off the back of what these other people are doing, and then going international and collaborating with you know, all these, like, whether it's an Italian or franchised or whatever, right? Whereas there are Black British people making original things that you can check out and are pushing the music and the genre forward. And so I just kind of wanted to platform that for a bit. If you want to support the channel, obviously you can subscribe, you can leave a like, obviously commenting helps. Share these videos around. There aren't a lot of Black British perspectives. I still have a link in the description to Black British creatives that you can follow, whether it's on YouTube, off the platform, etc. And yeah, like, just continue to support these voices because we don't have a lot of them, and it would be really nice to kind of be able to big up the scene and promote more and more, not only like Black British people, but commentary in this community, and, you know, like, kind of get something started. I'm really kind of working on building a network, so we'll see where we can go from there. Peace and love to everyone who's ever supported me. Let's get to 100K. Take care of yourselves and take care of each other. Peace. Bye-bye.